During these uncertain times, it could feel like, oh, maybe this isn't the right time to buy. It's not, but I'm telling you, there's an opportunity in every single market. A person's wealth is determined by their assets, investments, and things that they own. I say true wealth is about how you live it. Your girl is back. Welcome to season 2 of Wealth Within Reach. Welcome back to another episode of Wealth Within Reach, and I am happy to be back with you guys today. So many times I get people asking me questions about Section 8 investing, how to recession-proof your rental properties, and I'm really excited to have a conversation with you guys about 3 steps on how to recession-proof your rental business. But first, really quickly, if you have not already subscribed to this channel, go ahead, click the button, subscribe, so that you don't miss any episode that comes. Let's jump into it. Okay, so what is a recession exactly? There is so much noise about we are in a recession, we're not in a recession. And so I want to emphasize what that actually is. Basically, that is the general economic activity has decreased and unemployment has increased. So when that happens for a consecutive amount of time, then we are actually really in a recession. But here's the thing. A lot of times people hear the word recession and they're afraid, okay? Because there is generally a tightening in the market. Credit usually is a little bit more expensive. It's harder to get access to money, but I don't want you to think like a consumer that's listening to all the clickbait and the media and the headlines. I want you to really move towards being an expert and to think like an investor. In real estate, whether the market is going really well, which means like prices are increasing, there's lots of transactions happening, or not, there's an opportunity in every single market. And even in 2008, what do you think the opportunity was in the Great Recession? People were buying houses. I mean, buying houses like crazy. I was just out of college. I wish I knew. I could actually have afford to buy a house. And then if I knew about it, I have a client that bought a house for $5,000, y'all. $5,000. So yes, there was a lot happening during the time of the market. Unfortunately, there was a lot of mortgage fraud taking place during the Great Recession. There was a lot of people that were losing a lot of money, but at the same time, there was a lot of people that were entering into the wealth building journey. And like my client, she bought 2 properties for $5,000 that were later now worth over $300K, okay? And what she did in the meantime to be able to help get her through that time is she pivoted to different types of recession-proof investing strategies. And that's what I'm going to walk you through today. What's so interesting is that I started out investing in real estate very heavy in the Airbnb world. When we first started out, my goal was to make as much cash as possible because I was a cash flow investor. Like I really needed to make as much cash as possible so that I can pivot from my 9-to-5 to my new rental business, my new real estate business with as much ease as possible. And I needed to be able to have a rental strategy that allowed me to make the most money as possible. At the time, you could make 3 times more in income through Airbnb than long-term renting. So that really helped me to scale my portfolio faster, for us to be able to buy properties faster because we were making more money with Airbnb. But we got to a place where we realized that having too many eggs in one basket was actually hurting us, okay? And so we began to diversify our portfolio and not just all invest with Airbnb. So we began trying out long-term rentals, midterm rentals, and eventually converted 70% of our portfolio to Section 8 rentals. Now, when you hear Section 8 rentals, what do you hear? You may hear, people tearing up your property. You may hear people with terrible credit. You may hear people driving the cars in your yard. I don't know what you hear, right? You may think about a lot of the misconceptions, but what people don't realize is that There are a large amount of people, they just make less money. They don't necessarily are involved in like the riffraff, and they aren't necessarily, not going to take care of your property. They want a good place to live as well. They just may not make as much money as the next person. I even have rental tenants that on Section 8 that have decent credit, right? And so I'm going to walk you through a few recession-proof strategies that help you to think about, okay, if you are a person who's like, I really do want to take advantage of this market. I really want to take advantage of potentially being able to buy a property, under market value now that my local market may not be appreciating as rapidly. Or I want to take advantage of being able to get the seller to pay my closing costs right now because I'm going to buy a property. That's something that we did not see in 2021 and 2020. Sellers were not paying closing costs. People were buying properties sight unseen, right? Because it was so much competition in the market. So some of you want to take advantage of the less competition and want to figure out, how do I jump in today to help create financial options for me later? And so that's what I'm going to break down in today's episode. Before we jump into the 3 steps, let me really quickly define what recession-proof means. So what recession-proof means is it's basically learning how to execute certain real estate strategies that allow you multiple exit strategies, like not just 1 or 2, but 3 or 4 potential exit strategies that help you at the end of the day be able to take care of your expenses on your property regardless of the economy. Okay. Some of us don't have rich parents that can just, drop in and help us buy a property cash. Okay. And some of us don't either. So it's important that we set up strategies where we're able to have multiple options, because at the end of the day, it's like, look, I have to get a mortgage in order to make this investment. Like, yeah, I have multiple properties, but I have to have a mortgage in order to do that, in order to build wealth. So I am still taking a risk, but I want to help you learn how to take super calculated risk so that you can make sure that you're covered in case things like your tenant happens to lose their job, or, the market shifts and like the values change dramatically or something like that. And so I want to come up and really help you learn how to do what this is called recession-proof your strategies, so that you're covered in case different things happen with the economy that you can't control. Number 1, negotiating and purchasing properties under market value. I personally have never paid full price for a property. That does not mean that it's not okay to pay market value or full price for a property. I just haven't. And I haven't because I love finding deals. Like, how many of you guys, y'all love going to the mall and finding a good deal? Like, it gives you like a rush. That's how I feel about buying real estate, y'all. And so for me, I love finding properties that have been on the market for a while. And, they're good properties, but maybe like these bad pictures, the marketing is bad, or they only have one picture, or they've been overlooked by the masses. And I love coming in, analyzing that deal, negotiating, getting the price down significantly under market. So when I buy the property, I already have instant equity day one. You can do that in this market. And by being able to go ahead and purchasing a property significantly under market value day one, that gives you the peace of mind to know, like, 1, I'm going in with already equity in this property. Okay. So, and especially if you don't have to do that many repairs to it. So imagine there's a property that's listed on the market for $200,000 and it's worth $200,000, or maybe it's worth $180,000, but just that local market is just not moving fast enough because of interest rate. What if you were able to buy that property for $160,000, even though it's worth $180,000, and you can just buy that property, get a tenant in there, and now day one, you have $20,000 worth of equity, right? If something happens and you have to pivot, like you have to sell all of a sudden, or you have to do something different, you don't have to worry about selling that property and taking a loss because you actually already have equity in it day one, okay? That's what I like to have. I like to have that peace of mind knowing that at the end of the day, if something happens and I got to tap into this real estate to take care of something, or I need to take some time off and I need to tap into this equity to do something, I like to have those options. So I like to buy properties under market value. Are you tired of wasting so much time pulling data, reviewing comps, and trying to put together the financing to do your next deal? Guess what? You don't have to do all that. Backflip helps you to analyze properties instantly, helps you to pull high quality comps. You can actually apply for loans directly through the app while also choosing your best investment strategy. All you have to do is download the free Backflip app now and go on your way to make smarter, faster, and more profitable decisions today. Number 2, buying value add properties. Okay. If you've been following me for a while, you've heard of the BRRRR method: buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. And the BRRRR method is still a good method to use when investing in real estate, but that refinance part can be kind of tricky in this market. Okay. So if you buy and you rehab a property and you rent it out and you're like, bet, okay, cool. Now, at first, when I first ran my numbers, the property was supposed to be worth $200,000. But now, because of interest rates, maybe my local market decreased a little bit. Now the property isn't worth the same $200,000 that it was before. When you go to do the refinance, then you may not be able to get all your money out right now. Okay. So that's why the BRRRR method can be a little tricky. But maybe you can buy a property, do minimal renovations, rent it out, and go ahead and do a HELOC when you finish renting out the property. So you're not refinancing, you're going into it with your long-term fixed mortgage rate, right? And you're putting minimal money in. Maybe you're putting money in from another property or cash that you saved up. But by being able to take out a HELOC versus in a refinance, you're able to be able to tap into that equity. But you could get it as needed versus being able to have to depend on in a refinance and potentially getting an appraisal that doesn't actually allow you to get your cash back out. Okay. And so instead of the refinance having the HELOC there, whether you need to pay your money back a little bit for what you put in or you don't, you have that line of credit that's there, that's available to you, and you can use that to help you buy the next property without it having to actually be like, okay, if I don't refinance this property for this amount of money, then I am going to be at a huge loss. Nope, because you've already bought the property with your long-term fixed financing, and the HELOC is just a cherry on top for just additional options. Your strategy is not dependent on an appraisal to refinance. Okay. I have had clients right now in this market that, at first the property appraised for 240, then all of a sudden 2 comps came for 230, 225. The value has slightly decreased and now they're in trouble, right? They have these high credit cards and they're trying to figure out, and they were dependent on the refinance to be able to pay them off. You don't want to be in that position if you don't have to, okay? That is the second strategy that I want you to tap into. Number 3, last but not least, I want you to consider Section 8 rental properties, okay? Here is the biggest misconception. The same way you market a regular long-term rental property, that's the same way you market a Section 8 tenant. You set it up on Zillow, on apartments.com. All you do is put in there, you have the same qualifications. Maybe you want to do a minimum 600 credit score. You want to do 2 years landlord reference, whatever your rental qualifications is. You list all your qualifications and you just say, this property is voucher friendly. It's important for you to reach out to your local housing authority office so that you can understand what the steps are to become a voucher accepting landlord, okay? Generally, it's like you have to attend a class, you have to sign some paperwork, that whole thing, but it's like much easier than people think, right? You allow yourself to be able to receive vouchers. You just put that in your listing, voucher friendly. And then the only difference with qualification is they don't necessarily have to qualify making 2.5 or 3 times the rent. They qualify for the income piece based off of the voucher, but everything else is the same. The biggest misconception is that you cannot choose and qualify and screen a voucher tenant the same way that you can any other tenant, and that is not true. You could have the same screening process for them. I had a property that I was leasing out, and I leased it out to everyone, but I said I was voucher friendly. I received probably about 20 or 30 applications. And honestly, the applications for just a regular long-term rental applicants were worse than the ones for Section 8. They had, worse credit scores. They had worse landlord references. And then I actually did an open house and I met a mom, a single mom. She had been on Section 8 for a while. She was a manager at a Chipotle, but she was on Section 8. She had 2 teenage kids. And she was like, well, the property I've been in this property for 5 years and I like it. But recently they had a fight in the property and they started shooting. And a bullet, it went through my daughter's window and almost hit her. And so she's like, I can't live there anymore. And I know that my brother lives across the street from your property. So I really want to see if you allow me to rent your property. And she was great. She actually had a higher credit score than the people who, made more money than her. She just didn't make as much money as everyone else. And since then, I've rented to her. She's been there for 3 years. She is a great tenant. She pays a small portion of the rent and Section 8 pays everything else. And she's great. So I really want to, help us to demystify this myth of what you hear about Section 8 tenants. A lot of times, when you hear about the horror stories from Section 8 tenants, it's because the landlords did not screen them well, okay? And so it's not necessarily the tenant, it's the landlord, okay? They didn't choose the right tenant. And yeah, I have had stories where, it wasn't the right tenant, but in those situations, I did not screen the person. I felt intimidated because it was Section 8 and I let someone else do it and they didn't choose the right tenant. But when I started trusting my own gut, okay, and then building a community of other people and learning from them, figuring out what did you do well that worked for you and just sharing information, then I started being confident in making my own decisions. And then now we have tenants that are on Section 8 that have been great tenants that we love. And here's the beautiful thing about Section 8 that makes it fully recession-proof. If my tenants right now, the ones that pay a small portion of the rent, if something happens and they lose their job because of the economy, guess what? Their voucher will increase 100%. I won't receive less in rent. The housing authority will actually increase the voucher to cover the entire rent. And you may be asking, okay, is the rent comparable to what the local rents are in the area? In most cases, they are. They are comparable. You can apply for rental increases every year, just like you do regular tenants. They do have inspections that they perform. So you have to make sure you keep your property up to a certain standard, which you should be doing anyways. But I love it because I get paid on the first and I don't have any issues, okay? It does take a little bit longer to get set up. I would say it takes about a month longer to onboard a Section 8 tenant than a regular tenant, because generally they have to come out and do inspections and then they have to basically approve the amount that they're going to approve the voucher for. Just because your area may say, a lot of times they have payment schedules and it may say 3 bedrooms pay $2,000. But just because your area says 3 bedrooms for $2,000 doesn't mean you're going to get $2,000. Okay. They have to go through the full inspection process. They have a full out kind of checklist. And in order for your property to receive that full amount, it has to, have a few more things that you may not know of just by looking at the payment schedule. That's why it's important to actually go through the process first. And then they will do what's called a rent determination. And then that will actually determine how much money they're willing to pay you in rent. If you have more questions about how to recession-proof your investment and how to be able to figure out how to pivot during these uncertain times, I want you to be able to join my Facebook group. Come on into the group. Ask your questions. We have a community of seasoned investors that are having abundance personality that want to see you win and want to help you. And yeah, during these uncertain times, it could feel like, oh, maybe this isn't the right time to buy. It's not, but I'm telling you, there's an opportunity in every single market. And if you are willing to invest in the right knowledge, in the right support, in the right community and buy now, later, you end up saving so much money because you're not competing with everybody and their mama. And now you're able to take advantage of some additional incentives that won't be available in the future. All right. So if you love this episode, be sure to give me 5 stars. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and give me a comment. Let me know what was your biggest takeaway from this episode, and I love to see you take action. All right, guys, see you next time. Bye. Hey, friend, have you been enjoying this podcast and you're like, okay, Erica, how can I connect with you and other of your amazing guests that are on the podcast? You can do that within the Owning It and Living It Facebook group. I have the Owning It and Living It Facebook group to help to foster community with other like-minded real estate investors. Folks are sharing advice, I'm sharing tips, and we're fostering community so we can help take our real estate investments to the next level. If you are ready to do that, I want you to join the Owning It and Living It Facebook group. You can go to the link in the bio to join today.